Okay. Um, so hi, thank you all for being here. I'm touched by your interest to get to know me and hear what I have to say. So thank you for that. Um, and just to start with, um, some of you know this, but the way I got to hear about East Boca was years ago. I randomly, like on tour anytime, clicked on Rabbi Light, and I really liked what I heard. So I kept coming back for more on tour anytime. And he had mentioned, he a couple of times it came up that he was in Florida, and I'm like, oh, I love Florida. I always wanted to live in Florida. So we started to seriously look into that as an option. I started asking around about it. So first, I started asking about different neighborhoods, and when Boca came up, people were like, oh, there's so much going on there now. It's great. So much things for kids. This, that, like. And then I asked, well, what about East Boca? They're like, oh, people there are really special, and the rabbi's amazing. But like, it's far away from where everything is, and like the houses are a little bit smaller, blah blah blah. And I'm like, whoa, 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 wait. The people are really special, and the rabbi's amazing. Like, I don't need anything more than that. Like, that's like the highest compliment you can give a place. So that's essentially how we came here, and I just want to thank you all for living up to your reputation. Um, so, as many of you know, I'm a therapist, mental health, and there's like a terrible cliche out there that people become therapists because of their own issues. And like, isn't that such a horrible thing to say? Like, here's these people who just like want to help people and make a difference, and like we're saying it's about their issues. So I just want to set the record straight that it is 100% absolutely true. It is absolutely true. I could say that. Well, I can't say that there's another therapist in the room, at least one, but at least I could say I think it's true in terms of my areas of specialty as a therapist are things that are very close to my heart because of my own experiences. And mostly, I work with adults, general mental health, but I have a specialty in the mind-body connection, which is the emotional and psychological roots of pain and illness, and also working with Jewish singles. And these things are very close to my heart because of my own experiences. And they went from being like the biggest challenges in my life to the springboard to like my greatest sources of joy, my biggest accomplishments. And that's kind of what brings us here tonight and what I want to share with you. So, and yes, I do need notes to remember my own life. But so thank God my childhood was pretty, relatively smooth and easy. I had amazing parents, right, Ma? So thank God for that. So the first thing that really stands out in my memory was when I was a senior in high school, I developed this like horrible chronic debilitating back pain. And like when all my friends were going for pizza and things like that, I'm like home on a heating pad, and like my mom's going over my back with massage balls, and none of the doctors could find anything wrong. The scans didn't show anything. They tried different things, nothing made a difference. I was going to chiropractic, it didn't do anything. They gave me muscle relaxants, whatever it was, but they wanted me to sit like in these special chairs and get a special mattress. And it was getting really like depressing because I felt like I was a 17-year-old stuck in the body of an 85-year-old. And it seemed like there was no way out because nobody could figure out what was going on. Nobody had an answer. And then somebody told me that, so at the time, this is a while ago. So at the time, there was a popular radio talk show host, Howard Stern, not so sneeze, so I'm sure none of you know who he is. But so he's a popular host at the time. So people said that on his show sometimes he like goes on and on about this doctor, Dr. Sarno, who was able to cure him of this like debilitating back pain, and he was able to do it with zero physical interventions. Um, he just did it by like teaching him to tune in and be in touch with his emotions and figure out what's going on in his inner world. And just by doing that, he like was able to completely overcome back pain when nothing else worked. So we were intrigued. Um, so I called him up, and he said the first thing he said was, "Well, get my book," which at the time was Healing Back Pain: The Mind-Body Connection. Um, he's like, read it. That might heal you in itself. You may not even come to see me. You may not even need to see me. So I was really intrigued by that because I'm like, here this guy's willing to take like a few dollars from a book sale rather than like the several hundreds of dollars it would have taken to like see him in person. He was in New York, like it was an easy thing, but that's what he said. So I read the book and I was blown away. Like here was a book about back pain, and I felt like I learned so much about myself reading this book. Like learning about how I deal with feelings and how I show up in the world and just how I react to things. And I was like amazed. And sure enough, a lot of my symptoms started to get better. But my family being, good Demotic Jews that we are, we're like, okay, no, we got to go see him. We're not just going by a book. So I went to go see him, and I'll never forget, like, he was just very memorable, like, very like a tiny guy, like only a little bit taller than I am, and he had this like shock of like gray white hair, and even though he's a small person, just had a lot of personality, and he just had this interesting mix of like passion and conviction, but also like humility. It's just very memorable. And sure enough, after I meet him, I had a complete recovery, and he confirmed the mind body diagnosis, and I had complete recovery. And it was I was so grateful. This I was like 17, 18. I was so grateful. I was very young for his typical patient. Most of his patients were a lot older than me, but I was so grateful to go into my adulthood already having this knowledge. And I felt like it created this base for everything that came after, because it tuned me into my inner world and emotions and consciousness, and just the idea of a world out there that you can experience, but like isn't necessarily tangible. Um, so I felt, a lot of relief. Um, so then, so I graduate high school, and just to give you a little bit of my background, so I'm from Long Island, New York, Oceanside, if anyone knows it. It's right outside the Five Towns. A lot of people think of it as an alternative to the Five Towns. I grew up in a very modern Orthodox family, co-ed camps and day school and things like that. And when it came time to, you know, going to Israel, I was like, I don't really want to go to a school that's like just gonna do more of like what I was losing interest in high school, just like more teaching or whatever. So I found this school that was very into answering like the whys of Judaism and how it impacts your life and everything. It was called Mechalet Esther, which is a part of Neve Yerushalayim. So I went there, and again, it was just this amazing experience. I was somebody, I always kept kosher, I always kept Shabbos. I always had Jewish education, but like I was so blown away um, by what I learned there. Like I felt like I saw like Judaism go from like a bunch of rules to like the blueprint for life, or what it meant to be close to Hashem, and why you'd want to be close to Hashem. Um, and um, just like what it means to grow, and like to live truth was really attractive to me. I was always like a questioning, thinking person, so it really like made sense to me. So now with these like combined, and I stayed for a year and a half. And so now with these combined experiences, like I'm feeling like limitless. I'm feeling like bulletproof. Like, I'm living truth. Um, I have the secret to life. What could go wrong? And the answer is everything. Everything could go wrong, or at least seemingly wrong. Um, so so after that, so I went to college. I got a job. I liked writing, so I got a job writing for like a parenting magazine or a family magazine. Um, and then it came to shidduchim. So at 23 years old, I met the guy of my dreams. He was everything that I was looking for and more. We came from similar backgrounds, and um, we had common values, common goals. There was a lot of chemistry. We had a lot of fun together. The conversations were great. I'm like, wow, like I really hit the jackpot. And sure enough, we got married. Um, but unfortunately, this perfect dream started to feel like a nightmare soon after, and just daily life just started to feel really miserable. And we decided to go for help, and we went for marriage counseling. And I remember, like, a couple of sessions in, the marriage counselor turned to me and he said, you know, you're young, you don't have any kids, you're allowed to say I made a mistake and move on. I was like, that's not very encouraging to hear from a marriage counselor. Um, and I feel like he was just setting the stage because, several more sessions in, he said to me, he's like, look, Lizzie, um, he's not who you think he is, and you're not going to have the life with him that you think you're going to have, and I don't see this ever being healthy and happy. Um, and he's like, maybe this sounds forward of me, which of course it did. He's like, but it's killing me watching you, like, killing yourself trying to make this work when I just don't think it's ever going to work out well. So, so sure enough, he throughout the therapy, like, my husband said that, you know, I know I'm not a typical guy, and 99% of women wouldn't go along with what I want, but, like, I have to be with that 1%. And so that helped me make it clear that it wasn't going to work. And at just 6 months married, we got divorced. And it was extremely devastating. But at the same time, I felt so grateful, like, to go into the rest of my life and to go into a marriage kind of actually having experienced one and being able to see what really matters and what's important. And it also, so once it was over, I said to my therapist, thank you for being so blunt with me. But I said, thank you. And I said, I guess, this is the end of the road for us. Like, I have my decision. So he said it could be. He said, but, I want to tell you, like, even though it's very easy in your case to be like, oh, I didn't do anything wrong, I'm not guilty of anything. He said, you still had some faulty decision making. And, when it came to, like, the biggest decision of your life, and you may want to, just spend a little time in therapy to look at that, to figure out what was going on for you, that you didn't make the best decision here. So that started my own personal therapy. And once again, like, I was really blown away by therapy. So what I learned about myself, what I learned about relationships, what I learned about life, and like the capacity to, like, grow and change. And I was really blown away. And that's when I made the decision to go to school myself to become a therapist, and ultimately became a therapist. But that time that he said that to me, he's not who you think it is, and it's never going to be what you think it was. That stands out to me as, like, the moment that I became an adult, because I felt like that was the moment where I learned, like, you can plan and you can try, like, till you're blue in the face, but you can't make happen what you want, all the time. And I learned that grief is grief is a part of life, and grief is believing your life is one way, and in a moment, like, forced to face that it's not that way. And that grief is being overwhelmed by the reality of your own powerlessness. So, it's a very moving experience in my life. Um, so, so, these are just a couple examples where it started out really difficult. I went through something difficult, but I always tried to hold on to that, like, silver lining of how it helped me grow, or what I learned from it, or what I would take from that to go into the rest of my life, that would help me. So maybe you're thinking now, like, okay, so maybe now this is when, like, the good stuff starts, but not quite yet. When once this happens, everybody was trying. I was 24 years old when I got divorced, and everybody was, like, trying to assure me, don't worry, you have so much going for you. You have so much to offer. You're gonna have no problem finding somebody else. It's gonna happen soon. Don't worry. But unfortunately, it took another, like, 15 years till I got married again. And even though there were, it wasn't all bad. I grew and had some, some amazing and happy and fun experiences. a lot of it was pretty brutal. It's really hard. And I think that I almost feel like a duty to say this sometimes, that I think that what some people don't get is so hard about what I call like chronic singleness is one, like the powerlessness of it is can be crippling. I think that what gives life its luster is there's something that you want and you go for it. But what happens when, like, despite your best efforts and for over so much time it's not happening, like it starts to just eat away at like your your belief that life could be what you want, or you could have what you want in life. um, and you look around and it seems to be happening like with little effort for other people, and just like, why does it keep eluding you? And it's hard to stay positive. It's hard to keep going. And also it has a way of eating away at your self-esteem, because all of the there's a lot of rejection that happens over the years, aloneness, and you start to forget everything that's great about you. And sometimes you start to just compromise your values because you don't even know what to do with yourself. And but I think for me what stands out is like a memory of just something that was so difficult about it, was like feeling like your life is on pause. And where that really stood out for me was I remember the first and last time that I went, when a friend made a bar mitzvah for her son. And it came up to like the montage part of the party. And so I'm watching it, and at first, this is a close friend of mine, and so at first it was cute. I was excited. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember his bris, and oh yeah, I remember when his sister was born, and they took that trip to Disney, and then they bought their house, and then when the brother was born, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was struck by how much had happened in this person's life in 13 years compared to like, well, what happened in mine? And not saying that nothing happened. I grew and had my own milestones and things like that. But like, I just remember it like a feeling like it was tearing up my insides, the contrast of like, what could be versus what was. So that like stuckness, that experience of like life on pause is just part of what I think, makes singleness so hard. So when people even talk about the singles crisis, it's not just like, oh, there's so many people who can't find someone. It's just what it does to you, and what it does to your self-esteem, what it does to your sense of faith and your optimism for the future, um, is really difficult and really crippling. So I had this. So I got to the point where I was about 36, and I was still single, and I was like just so exhausted by it. And I remember just like turning to Hashem and saying to him, like, what do you want me to do? Like, what do you want me to do? And this was not the first time I said it. It was probably time number 35. But this time when I said it, I felt like this answer come in my head, and it said nothing. I want you to do nothing. And I realized in that moment, like, here I am trying to figure out and trying different things, and looking for the solution. Like, I did everything that you could think of like 3 times over. And it's not wrong to do whatever you can, but I was treating it as if like it's in my control. Like, I'm gonna make this happen. And I felt like Hashem was saying to me, like, can you just move out of my way and let me do my thing? Like, just relax, like, just let me do my thing. So I learned then like the power of surrender. And so I said to Hashem, like, you lead and I'll follow. Like, I'm tired of like exhausting myself over this. So I wasn't getting much dates at that point, and I stopped doing like the things, if it was certain events or whatever, that like I just didn't feel good at. Now what I did do was I joined a Jewish positive thinking class where we would do like visualizations and affirmations to feel Hashem's love for us. Um, I started my day every day with reading something from Living Amuna or praying with fire to like set the tone for my day. And I worked with a therapist also about like becoming more flexible. That it can't just be like I need this one thing to happen to like have peace and be happy. Like, I had to find other ways to be able to say like I could feel fulfilled, like I feel good. Like, it doesn't have to just be this one thing. And for the first time in like a bunch of years, I really felt this shift inside, and I felt like the less stress than I ever felt, and just felt so much more relaxed than I had in years, even though my circumstances didn't change. So now you might think like, oh, okay, finally, now's like when the good stuff is going to start. Please don't say anything more bad. Um, but unfortunately, not yet. There was not the revealed good. There was still more to learn. Um, so it's better to laugh than cry. That's what I say. So what happened next was, and this is a hard one. At 37, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it came as a shock because it just like came out of nowhere. Um, it came at a time that like I was starting every day with lemon water because of detoxifying properties, and then I would have a green smoothie because of the antioxidants, that prevent cancer. And it just so happens like I wanted to work out, but I hate working out. So I bought a little rebounder, which is like a mini trampoline, because I thought it'd make it fun to exercise. And rebounders are actually supposed to be really good for the lymph system. And here I had a cancer of the lymph system. Um, and I don't have a significant cancer history in my family. I was kind of young for cancer. And for this cancer, I was like young and old because it's actually a cancer that some kids get. A lot of people get at college age and then it starts again at like 55 and older. And I was 37. So it was just like an odd age to get it. Um, and um, I just want to say also, like with Hodgkin's lymphoma, like oncologists treat it like it's the cold. Like it's oncologists' favorite cancer. So they would say to me like, "Oh, don't worry, it's curable." I'm like, "Oh, really? It's curable?" They're like, "Yeah, like for a stage 4 person, it's like 85%." I'm like, 85% is not curable. 100% is curable, but all this to say, like, my experience with cancer wasn't so much worrying about like, am I going to live or am I going to die? Because I knew that the odds were that I would be okay. But it did make me think about like, okay, so then why is this happening? What is the purpose of it? What is this meant to accomplish? Um, so so when I found out, I could hear the voice in the back of my head of what I was supposed to say. I was supposed to say, assuming I survived, like, now for sure I'm never going to have what I want in life. Like, for sure nobody's ever going to marry me now. Like, 37 stage 4 cancer, going to have to go through chemo. Like, it's over. Like, this is just the nails in the coffin. Um, but even stronger than this voice in the back of my head was like I felt like this pulsating inside, like this energy. I'm like, what is that? And this is what happens when you're a therapist who uses somatics in their work. Like, you know that your body's always communicating something to you. So like I'm tuning into this like energy I feel inside. I'm like, is that excitement? I'm like, how could I be excited right now? And what came forward for me is like irony, because it felt very ironic. Like irony is opportunity. When things don't make sense, it means that there's a calling in it for you. It means that there's like creating an opening for something. And actually, something that came into my mind was like the Yitzchak Sarah. And I don't want to like make my own Pirushim or anything, but like it came to me like a laugh of irony, like laughing with Hashem, like, oh Hashem, you're so funny. Like this is so you. Only you can do this. Like, but like in a trusting, playful way. Like I know you have something up your sleeve, Hashem. Like, and and I thought to myself, like, who says this is bad? Like I know people think of cancer, especially stage 4, whatever, like it's bad. But like, who says? Like I can make my own associations with this. Like maybe this is good. And I said, sure, it feels to me like this came out of nowhere, but like Hashem always knew that it was happening. I just found out about it. Like perhaps everything was leading up to this moment. Like perhaps everything before this was just preparing me for this, and that there's an opportunity within this. And I thought to myself, what if this is my Akedas Yitzchak moment? Um, you know, what if like how I respond to this could decide like my whole destiny, my whole future? Um, like I've been feeling so stuck and powerless. What if this is my way out somehow? So I felt like Hashem was saying to me, I have good stuff in store for you, but it's going to be a wild ride. Like, are you down for it? I was like, Hashem, bring it. So I have to tell you, I know this is going to sound crazy, but cancer was one of the best times of my life. I went through 6 months of chemo, and for mine, there's like several different chemos you have to do. I was there like all day long, and I remember like even the nurses, like they would come in like full on hazmat suits to administer it, and like you always knew which ones were pregnant or trying to get pregnant because they came in with like a spacesuit, like they literally had a helmet on and everything, just to like handle these toxic chemicals that they're just like putting right into my veins. Um, and um, but even with like how toxic this stuff was, um, I never really felt that sick. I never got that sick, and I lived pretty close to my normal life. And during that time with cancer, like I took care of myself. I did everything that they told me to do, but I didn't make it about the cancer. I made it about my mission. I'm being sent on a mission. And there were ups and downs for sure. It's not like everything worked out, the way I would have wanted it to, but yeah, as it was happening. But I always looked for reasons to say thank you, and I always looked for Yad Hashem everywhere. And I made it almost a game to see Yad Hashem. Like I was saying that the Yitzchak Sarah before. Like, where's the test? And I'm determined to pass it. And it's funny, but when you're dealing with life or death, when you're in a crisis, a lot of the things that you used to treat as important, a lot of the things that you used to put your time and energy to, like they just fall to the wayside. Like they just lose a lot of their significance. And I felt like I was just stripped down to the things that matter most in my life, in life. And I felt like it was just this little cocoon of me and Hashem, and it was the best feeling ever, like to just have this kind of intimacy with him, like without distractions. um, as I was going through it, I only told the people closest to me about what was going on. I kept it secret. um, of course, I asked Rav and he told me to do that for shidduchim, but really the main reason why I wanted to do that was I didn't want anyone else's energy to impact my experience. Like I was pumped. I was excited for this mission, this opportunity, and I didn't want other people's, worry or feeling bad to dampen that. Um, I will say that amongst all the positive, though, the hair was a really hard part. Losing my hair. I'm sure that's hard for anybody who goes through this, but especially, I turned 38 as this was going on, so being 38 and single and having to put a sheitel on was extremely painful. I refer that like definitely as a kapara aspect of the experience. Um, but otherwise, I was really careful about what I put my attention on. So I specifically would not say cancer, the word cancer, ever. I would just say Hodgkin's, because to me it sounded like kind of cute, like kind of like a children's character or something. And I never said the word chemo. I would always say treatment. It was just really important to me to like create my own associations and not have things that I heard from like books and movies and things like that of what these things were. And I just had to tell you one little crazy story. So it came to the point in my treatment. So as I said, when I'd go for chemo, it was like an all-day affair because there was a bunch of different ones I had to take. And I had this joke with the nurses. I actually really, really, I don't know if there's any nurses in here. I really, really came to appreciate nurses going through this. Like they are amazing. They can make and break, when you're going through something medical. But I had a joke with the nurses about like red pea time, which is one of the chemos that they would administer to me was like this neon red. It was like this bright, bright red. And they would tell me, after this, when you have to pee, your pee is going to be red. We're just letting you know. So it was red pee time, and I had to go to the bathroom. And by this point, I had gotten a port in, and I was, connected to an infusion machine for the chemo. So you have to like take your pole and walk it down the hallway to get to the bathroom. So I start going down the hallway, and I look down the hall and I see this like familiar figure. I'm like, very short guy, shock of gray white hair. I'm like, no way. So I take my pole and I start running down the corridor. I'm like, Dr. Sardo, Dr. Sardo. And he turns around. I was right, it was him. This is like over 20 years later. Um, And I was like, Dr. Sarno, I was your patient 20 years ago. He was about 93 at this time. He was just there for his own like medical visit. And he's like, really? And then he looks at me and like, he sees like my beanie and my thinning hair and I'm holding this like machine. And he's like, you know, like he gets this look on his face. I'm like, it's Hodgkin's lymphoma. Like I'm telling this as a doctor, like I'm hoping he won't worry so much. I'll know it's the good cancer, you know, like it's Hodgkin's lymphoma, but I just want you to know, like, I don't even feel sick. And I really credit it to like where my mind is. And you gave me that start. And, you know, he was just like, you know, just smiling and just, you know, nodding his head. And I took that moment, like, and by the way, he died later that year. And I took that moment, like, what were the chances I'm going to run into Dr. Sarno as I'm getting my chemo 20 years after I saw him? And I'm like, to me, this felt like a real Hashgacha Pratis moment, like a just like a real God wink from Hashem, like you're on the right track. Like that's how I took that. But I do want to be very clear. It's important to me. Like, I'm not claiming to have the cure for cancer because I have gotten some of those calls before, like, oh, I heard you have the cure for cancer. No, I don't have the cure for cancer, and I do not think that everyone can have a positive experience of it. I don't want to like belittle anyone who did not, but I do think that everyone's cancer experience is meant for something. And I actually believe that about every challenge, and whether that's big or small, that it's not just about the problem. If you can see through it to the calling, to the way it's meant to change you and your life, it's there as an opportunity. So 7 months after I finished the chemo, and I was in remission, is when I met my husband, and we met through a Jewish dating app. Now, when I met my husband, we have like radically different backgrounds. And so I was worried, like, how could this work? Like, our frames of reference are so different. But I just want to share like what stood out to me about my husband. My husband was handed nothing in life. Like a lot of the things that we take for granted as normal, like he just didn't grow up with. His father abandoned him at birth. He grew up just him and his mom. They were always poor. He's had a job since he's 12 years old. He was alone a lot because his mom was always working. To make money when he graduated high school, he joined the army, and just his luck, that was right when 9/11 happened. And he was in Iraq for 3 years. Um, and he's also the least selfish and least entitled person I have ever met in my life. And it's because he doesn't treat anything in life as if it's a given. He knows that everything in life is gifted to you. And I was so used to like from dating, like, you know, this is what I want to do and this is what I want. And the other, you know, I was like that. The other person was like that. And for him, like, he was so simple. Like the only thing he wanted in life was to be a father. That was like super important to him, and just to serve Hashem. And like that was it. Like he just didn't care about anything else. And also with him, like I don't know why, in like, I don't know, 16, 17 years of dating or something like that, I'd never felt with somebody else, but I felt with him like that he genuinely cared about my happiness, like even more than his own. And that was before like he even knew me well. So even me, I was like, are you sure you want to marry somebody who's going to be like 39? Just went into remission from stage 4 cancer, being watched over the next couple of years to see if it relapses. Just went through 6 months of chemo when like all this is so important to you. And but it had never even occurred to my husband like to hold that against somebody. And you know, so I think like this favorite quality of his, you know, of mine for me is that is his anivus, his humility. Like he doesn't live with the illusion that what he has comes from his own choices and actions. Like he knows that everything is from Hashem. So just one point I feel important to make so clear is that all those years that I had like everything going for me, um, you know, I hope I was, you know, nice and interesting and caring and all of that. But I was very skinny. I had my long flowy hair. I had my cute little outfits, you know, all of that. It didn't happen. But then when it seemed b'derech hateva, like impossible, when the odds were highly stacked against me, when I'm, newly in remission from cancer, and had just gone through chemo, and I'm 39, that's when it happened. And I really feel like every shidduch is a miracle, but with mine, I really got to see the miracle. Um, so we get engaged, and of course, what is like the first thing people say to me when I get engaged? Yes, mazel tov, but after that, go on fertility medication. Like even before you get married, like even before you start trying, just go on fertility medication now. And I understood where it was coming from. Even for somebody who didn't go through everything that I went through at 39, it could take a while, it could be hard, whatever. But I said to people, like, it makes sense, and maybe I will have to do that. But if I do that now, I'm not giving Hashem a chance to like show me what He can do. And sure enough, 9.5 months after we got married, my Yehuda was born. We named him Yehuda to give thanks to Hashem. And then 20 months after that, my Shalom was born, both of them with zero interventions, totally naturally, and Shalom because it's considered the ultimate in blessing. So Baruch Hashem, I'm not going to hit you with any big negative things at this point. My life finally transitioned to revealed good. But I do just want to say, like, this one tefillah that I had in like the last year or two before I finally got engaged and married. And I didn't even realize at the time what I was saying, but now I feel like every day I see how it's coming true. So I used to say to Hashem, like, please Hashem, help me to serve you from simcha and not from Yisurim, not from struggles. Because I knew that the point of Yisurim was to make you realize your dependence Hashem and come close to Him. Check. So I'm like, but Hashem, like, there must be a way to serve you, like having the things you want too, like having good things too. Like, can you please let me learn that way? So the reason why I'm sharing this, like this tefillah with you is, a lot of times when I share my story with people, like they'll say like, oh, it's so amazing that you're able to respond that way. I don't know if I could have, et cetera, et cetera. And, I'm going to tell you why I'm not so amazing. When you're in crisis, when you're dealing with life or death, when life like brings you to your knees, it's actually easier to do big things. But now that like the big stuff is kind of over and I'm just dealing with the everyday, the challenges of having simcha, the challenges that come with parenting and marriage and having expenses and being busy all the time and being forced to face your bad midos when you have a family. This is like by far the most challenging thing I've ever done. So I feel like how you respond to everyday challenges when like no one's going to ask you to speak about it, those are the things that really make you a hero. And I see women in this community, they have big families and they work. And then I see them like jump up at every opportunity to do a mitzvah and like stand up to every opportunity to do a chesed. And I'm like, whoa, like those are my superheroes. So, I'm going to conclude, but anytime I speak, I like to give just a couple of takeaways because it makes me feel a little bit better about it not just being me. So I want to share with you some quick lessons that my experience and just getting to know my husband and his experiences and also just witnessing the experiences of my clients as a therapist. Because I forgot to say before also, like being a therapist is also like such a fulfilling thing for me. Like that's really what carried me through a lot of these years is people allowing me on their journey to help them heal and grow and write their own story. I consider that a real privilege and it's very fulfilling for me. But I see this in their stories as well. So, and I might read a little bit here, but one is like, happiness is not getting what you want. Happiness is wanting what you get. And no matter what you get, say, this is good, and let it unfold over time and show you how it is. Most pain comes not from what happens to us, but from the meaning we give to it. When I look back on what were the hardest times for me, they weren't the things that were completely out of my control, like the cancer. They were from hopelessness or being really hard on myself because of the conclusions I was drawing from the things happening in my life. We're not the expert. Another is the key to happiness is flexibility. Pain comes from resisting reality. Peace comes from the ability to roll with what life gives you instead of insisting on what you think is best. Instead of saying, this wasn't supposed to happen, say, this is exactly what was supposed to happen. I just didn't know it. When you can say, what am I meant to do with this? Or how is this supposed to change me? A whole world of opportunity opens up to you. Another is life is an illusion. We never go by how things look. Our job is to see through the circumstances to the test within. Doing this is the difference between something making you or breaking you. Put on Amuna glasses. Have fun with it. Games are fun. Enjoy playing hide and seek with Hashem. And lastly, you are so much more powerful than you think. But real power doesn't come from doing and figuring out. That's a real problem for Jewish women, by the way. We're all control freaks. Real power comes from allowing. You know you're on the right track if you are calm and positive, even if you are in need. If you feel desperation, you're not there yet. I'm reminded of what the Gemara says about two people pray for the same thing, but one gets answered first. Why that person? One person was praying in case it makes a difference. The other person was praying knowing it will make a difference. The one who knew was the one that got answered first. And that knowledge gives you simcha. So my recommendation is be that person that knows. So thank you for listening. And just because I have your attention, I'm just going to say, one last quick thing for the community. When Sarah approached me about doing this, the way that she explained it to me was, we all see each other at shul, we'll pass each other in the street, but like, how well do we really get to know each other? She's like, this is a way, like, people share their stories, so like we can really get to know each other. And that's really what got me to do it, was that just sounded really nice. And it made me sorry for the ones that I've missed, but I hear those recordings and I definitely want to hear them. But I also just want to encourage everybody to do their own. And, I know my story is a little bit crazy and a little bit big. It doesn't have to be this crazy. She mentioned to me, like, it could just be like something about your job taught you something or like affected you in some way. And you can share that. And it can be like short and simple, but it still just gives us a glimpse of who you are. And so I just want to do like a plug for this little program, and just that there's other things. I know, is it you that does a coloring group, right? There's a coloring group, right? But even just this past Shabbos, we were learning Shar B'Tachon with Michal Lowinger, and like it's just so nice. Like, she was bringing some things from Rabbi Shais Taub and just made it very relevant and interesting, but also just facilitated like genuine conversation among us. Like, I think it's so important for women to have connection over real things. And so, I'm new to the community, newish now, but I want to say that I'm all for that, and I hope that we all, can participate in that and do that together. So thank you.